Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Marshall Public Access TV. You are watching on Studio One, Charter Channel 8, Prairie Wave 35, Tiger TV Charter 19, and Prairie Wave 80. My name is Doug Goodman, and tonight, or this afternoon, whenever you happen to be watching the show, because it will be played over the next several weeks throughout Public Access TV, our opportunity tonight is to bring you a very special edition of Marshall Public Schools News. And with me are two very, very special guests, Superintendent Clint Willert and District 413 Board of Directors Chairman Jeff Chapman. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Welcome.
Glad to be here, Doug. It's a pleasure, as always, to have the opportunity to sit down, and I think we have something very important to share with our public this evening. And as we talk about what we're going to discuss, the upcoming operating referendum, and I'm really looking forward to that opportunity because we want our community to be informed of what we're doing and where we're going and how they can be informed about the voting process.
That's very well said, and we invite you as watchers, listeners, to maybe grab a pencil and paper, and maybe if you have received some of the itinerary that's been out there, and the school district has done a great job of putting out brochures, pamphlets, sample copies of the ballots. Maybe find those in your mailbox or in your letter area there. Pull them out so you've got maybe some reference material, or just jot down some of the things, because I think it's important that the message in our show this time is to kind of provide everybody with maybe some insight, some facts, some basic conversation about how important this vote coming up in a couple of weeks, in fact it's less than 2 weeks probably now, where people get a chance to really know the facts and understand kind of how this process is going to work. So I want to welcome you guys, and I think it's something that, once again, we hope lots of people watch throughout the next couple of weeks so they can have a conversation amongst themselves, their neighbors, their friends, other families, anybody within the Marshall School District, really. And so I'm going to start, I guess, by just asking some basic questions. And, you know, this is an important issue. It's something that Marshall is not alone in this quest to continue to operate, to continue to provide the services, the quality programming that we have been in the Marshall Public Schools. But let's start with maybe basically a general question about the whole situation is this operating levy. If you want to explain that basically and why we need it, what we need to do to make it happen.
Sure. Obviously, this is something that's not unique to Marshall. As we look at where we're at this year, right now, 100 school districts this year are seeking an operating referendum, and it's important that our public understands that that is the second highest number in the history of the state of Minnesota seeking an operating referendum to fund basic programs, basic services, basic operations, hence the name operating referendum, for what we do. And it's something that unfortunately has become the norm rather than the exception to the rule.
I think it's important, being a Marshall resident for 25 years, that even though we're a very conservative community, we believe in public education. And now's the time to take action. Now's the time to inform yourselves of what the issues are, not after the vote. If we go to the vote and it fails and we have to make cuts, we have to have a balanced budget. We're mandated by the state to offer certain classes. We always have to have those classes. But by having only 1.4% increase in funding from the state the past 14 years on an average, just doesn't cut the mustard. Now's the time that we need to step up as a community and say, yes, we value education. We want to keep our good public school systems. Now's the time to ask the questions. I'm in the phone book, Clint's in the phone book, the district office is in the phone book. Call your school board members, call your committee members, find out if you have a question. Don't come to the school board meeting after the vote if it fails and we have to make cuts and say, why are you making these cuts? Now's the time to inform yourself.
And I think that's a great point, Jeff, because oftentimes people may not get out and vote and be informed about what the issues are, or they may make a vote that says, I'm against raising property taxes, so I'm going to vote no. And after they vote no, the district comes back and we've referenced the cuts based upon our preliminary financial model looking forward. We anticipate that if we have a failed operating referendum, this spring we'll have to make up to $325,000 in budget reductions. Next spring we would have to make up to $930,000 worth of budget reductions. So about $1.2 million in budget cuts over the next 2 years if this fails. And oftentimes what has happened in other communities, and it's been stated by other state and community officials that have said, boy, I didn't expect that to happen, or I didn't want that program to be cut, or I didn't want that activity to be reduced. We need to think through all the consequences relative to this. And I think Jeff's point of be informed, know what the issues are, know what the concerns are, and really know what the needs are. And we want to talk about those things as well. So our community is understanding what the needs are and what it is that we've done with the dollars in the past, because we believe in holding ourselves accountable, and what we'll do with the dollars into the future, because again, this board, this administration has been very cognizant of managing our budget so that it's balanced, so that we're fiscally responsible, but at the same time have managed to keep many of the good programs and services that we've come to enjoy and expect here in Marshall Public Schools. So it's important people are informed about those things.
And I think, excuse me, Jeff, I think it is important that, first of all, we answered that question. What is causing this? Because people think, well, we just built this new facility. What is causing it? And it comes down to lack of funding from the state, or these cutbacks that the state continues. That 1.4% average and the basic formula that provided the funds is cut back. So they're really relying on the local districts to provide more money because the state isn't providing it.
I agree with that. It's you just cannot operate a business for 1.4% increase in funding. It's just not going to happen. And I don't have a problem with asking our local community for more money, because it's our school system, it's our kids, and we, in a conservative area, like to have control of our system. I think that's another reason why we have such a good school system. We graduate 95% of all our students. We take care of all our kids, the ones that have disabilities. We have one of the best special education programs in the state right here in Marshall, Minnesota, because we take care of our kids. I just feel it's very important that people step up and say, you know, on my house is $200,000. It's going to cost me $118 a year to maintain our high quality education program. $118 a year. I can spend that taking the wife out.
Yeah.
But you know, if I spend that taking the wife out, I have her happy and I'm happy, and that's great. But if I spend that on myself and ruin our school systems, well, then I'm going to have to lock my car at night. I'm going to have to deadbolt my house with 2 deadbolts. Idle kids get in trouble. And we're faced now with, we're mandated to have so many programs that what's going to get cut? That's the hard part. You're going to cut really good programs to keep kids active, motivated, and educated. It's just not worth the sacrifice of what you have to. I mean, the sacrifice is not much compared to what you would have to pay.
And even to distill it down even further, Jeff, I think when you look at per $100,000 of valuation on your house, it's $8 a month. And you think about what $8 a month is, that's not a lot of money. I mean, we can even break that down per day if we wanted to, Doug. I mean, you start thinking about that. What is $8? I think people spend $8 a week on coffee, and isn't an investment in kids more important than that cup of joe that you have every morning? Now, I know for some people it's a tough question sometimes, but when you really pull back the issue, I think it's important that people understand what the cost and the benefit is in our community, for our community, and you have to face the realities that what Jeff has said, a robust school system really equates to a robust economy, and a robust economy equates to high housing values. It equates to safe, secure communities. It's a place where young families want to come. A vibrant school system really serves as a key economic development engine in any community. And as Marshall continues to poise itself as a regional economic center and a regional recreational center, all of those things are so important that people talk about and understand, because We're talking about so many wonderful things right now in our community. We're talking about becoming a regional amateur sports center. We're talking about becoming the regional economic hub for greater southwestern Minnesota. We're talking about continued economic development. We've renovated downtown. We've renovated Main Street. We're talking about our educational corridor with our high school and our university system located very closely across the street from each other. We're talking about all those wonderful things. And we're afraid that if people aren't informed and knowledgeable, that oftentimes those things get put on a back burner when we have to sit down in the spring and start talking about $300,000 or $900,000 worth of budget reductions.
You know, Doug, what that means is that we're going to have to cut teachers' jobs. We're not going to be able to pay adequate pay for teachers. We're going to have to eliminate certain programs. And that's just not acceptable. And if you ask people one-on-one, is this acceptable to have this large of a class size? They would say no. So it's really, to me, it's very basically simple. People in Minnesota, and especially in Marshall, Minnesota, value good education. So we need this.
That's so true. And school districts, a lot of times the community is based on their educational system. The quality of life here in Marshall is so much connected with our Marshall Public Schools. And, you know, in talking to community members as they're out there, you know, trying to make an informed decision, one of the things that comes up, and I'll just kind of go into this, is that Marshall just recently built a new high school, renovated the middle school, renovated Parkside. Is that in any way impacting this operations level or you know, situation? Because I think some people think, well, they just got the new school, they got money, but actually that's not the case, because the building funding is way different than the operational funding, and you can't go from this one to this one. I mean, you can't take money from here or there. I think that's something we need to explain a little bit. But this is just operations.
Right.
Which involves, what operations would be your teachers, your programs, administration costs. No brick and mortar in this at all. This is just to offer a quality education.
As I hear what you're saying, Doug, there's a few questions in there that people have asked, and I'm going to really distill it down, and hopefully we can get to each one of those components. One is it more expensive to operate our new facilities than our old facilities? That's the first question that comes out of that. The second question that comes out of that is, well, we heard that there were some leftover dollars from the bond referendum. Can those be transferred over to operations so that you can cover those costs with those? That's the second question that comes out of there. Another question that comes out of there is the whole issue relative to the system as a whole with cost of operations, and we can talk about that as well. So we'll get into each of those. The first one obviously is we can't use dollars from bond referendum for funding core operations in our school system. And the core operations meaning those things that we've talked about. Jeff has alluded to the teacher salaries, the operations, lights, heat, those type of things that we need here in Minnesota, especially as we're starting to stare down another winter here pretty soon. All those basic operational costs that we have. Transportation and programs and services like has been alluded to with special education and services for our English language learners and all those programs as well. So those are all operational costs. When you look at our operational components, over 85% of our budget goes to teachers and staff members' salary and benefits. And when I say teachers and staff members, that includes our custodians, because we have invested in quality facilities, something our community is very proud of. We look at that theater out there and the thousands, literally thousands of people that have gone through that facility, enjoying the wonderful performances that have come from all over the state of Minnesota and all over the upper Midwestern region, and national performers as well. Those are things that we've come to enjoy, but we hire custodians to take care of that, to clean it and make sure that it's maintained well. We hire somebody that helps us with the scheduling of those things. It just doesn't happen automatically. So those are core operations that are essential for a school to function in a vibrant community like Marshall. So those are the key pieces there. And in terms of the efficiencies, and I'll let Jeff expand on each one of these too from his perspective. Our new facility is more efficient than what our old facilities were. Operation costs per square foot, they are running at a more efficient level than what they were before. We have a larger square footage with some of the larger spaces that we have, the auditorium, theater, for example, the gym spaces, for example, all those things where our community is in and out of those facilities all the time. And again, thousands of people in those from all over the state. We've hosted tournaments here for basketball and volleyball where we've had school board members from towns like Wayzata coming down and telling us, boy, why can't Wayzata do something like what you've done here in Marshall? That's pretty good when Marshall's being benchmarked that way. And I think that's something we're all very proud of, but we need to continue to protect and maintain those investments, and that takes people, and that takes operation costs, lights, heat, energy, all those things.
And when we did the studies of if we really needed a new high school, actually, we took 2 buildings offline, 2 buildings that were falling apart. They needed new roofs, they needed new tuck pointing, they didn't have enough outlets in the rooms, you could not have the right chemistry labs, they were overcrowded, they had asbestos in them. I mean, there was lots of issues. If we were to fix all the issues of those 2 buildings, it would cost twice as much as building a new high school. In the long run, the community is further ahead.
So, what do we stand to gain in this whole process? If we pass this, what change will occur?
Actually, we'll be able to maintain what we have now. We will not have to increase the class sizes. We will not have to cut certain programs. The second question is going to add to our technology so we can train our teachers better to use our technology and some upgrades that way. But the first question is just to maintain. And I did have the question brought to me. It goes, 4 years ago you were offering $200 just to maintain. Why do you need $500 now? It's because we need $500 now because we made $2 million in budget cuts during those 5 years. We can't afford to cut anything else, Doug. We're going to go right into the core programs. We're going to go right into the heartthrob programs because there's nothing left to cut. We will not have to cut that. It's just with inflation and lack of funding, we need the $500 just to maintain. Would you like to highlight on this question too?
And that's really good about the first question with the maintenance, because that has come up. They said, well, if you're maintaining isn't 500 and 200. Well, when the 200 was passed several years ago, that was done with the understanding that there would be some increases in state funding. But during part of that time, there were 2 years where we had 0% increases 2 years in a row without any new funding from the state. So when you couple a 0% increase in new funding from the state with the fact that inflation is rising, you actually are losing ground. And so the 200 really plugged a lot of holes that existed at that point in time. It really didn't serve us to enhance some things, but we've maintained some things along the way. We've maintained some very important programs that our community has told the school board and the administration that, boy, these are important these are community-driven, very important courses and activities. We heard that. We didn't make those reductions. At the same time, our class sizes have inched up. They have inched up, and when you start thinking about, okay, 25, 27, 30 kids in a classroom, some people may think, well, that's not so bad, but it really does become an issue when you start looking at the whole range of needs that our students have that 20, 30 years ago, students didn't necessarily have at that point in time. It's really reflecting the changes that we see in society. And if people have questions about that, you don't have to look very far. You just turn on late night television and see what's on the television and how through reality shows dysfunctional families are being glorified. It speaks to those type of issues that we deal with. Now with the second question, it is an opportunity to do what we've been talking a lot about in our system, which is supporting those 21st century skills of our kids. And there's a recent study that came out that said a majority of the population across the entire United States, says that our students need to have those 21st century skills. And what does that really mean? Well, that means our kids need to be able to think critically. They need to be able to apply knowledge and information. They need to be able to utilize technology. And that means our teachers need to be trained on how to use technology so our kids understand how they can apply technology tools to help them work more efficiently. Again, it's all about workforce skills and those skills that are necessary for our kids to be successful when they leave Marshall, whether they choose to enter the workforce, whether they choose to go to a 2-year college, whether they choose to go to a 4-year institution, whether they choose to enter the military or pick up some certification experience. Whatever they choose, we need to equip them with the skills so that they can be successful at that level. And that is those 21st century skills, but it's also about the core academics. It is about mathematics, and it is about mathematical reasoning and thinking. It's about being able to communicate effectively. So we want to make certain that those things are preserved as well in our system. The other piece that we've talked a lot about is embracing the technology to help us become more efficient in our delivery of our curriculum. And that can mean technology-aided instructional tools. We hear a lot these days about online learning and those types of things, looking into and expanding opportunities with online learning for our students. There's also various programs out there that really help our students with language, English language skills. We know that it's important that our children can communicate effectively, but we know as well that we have new immigrants to our country that need the skills to speak English effectively. And in order to do that, we need to help them. We have that obligation. And there are tools out there that we can implement into our system, but we can't do that without resources.
Well, that's a great point, and I think, once again, we hope that our viewers tonight are watching this, taking down some of this information, and maybe we need to do a little bit of comparison. We talk about $200 per pupil is our current operating levy. Now, that's quite different than what the rest of the state and even in our area is operating at. And maybe we could talk a little bit about that comparison, because $200, which was passed a number of years ago, isn't even the average. It's below. It's like in the lower 25% of all school districts in the state of Minnesota, right? Correct?
Actually, I think the average operating levy right now for the state of Minnesota is $709 per kid. Marshall's at $200. We're giving fine, top of the state education for $200. This is a very, very well-run, thrifty school board and administration. We're asking for $500 for the first question. That barely brings us up to the 50 percentile.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not even close to the state average. But we can do that because we have excellent teachers, excellent administration, and we use the money wisely.
It's such an important point, and once again, even if you look at some of our area schools in the Southwest Conference, there are many that are at that average of 700, and we're still at 200. So it does give us that need. It shows the need right there that we really need to seriously consider not just passing the first question, but the second question to even get us close to that state average.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a great point. And you look where we're at comparatively with other districts in the region, we're well below those. I mean, there's some districts that are $700, $800 per pupil, some that are over $1,000 per pupil, and we don't have to go very far. I believe Lynn, for example, where we have quite a few residents that send their children to Lynn, that live in the Lynn district but come here to work in the Marshall system, to work in the Marshall community. They're paying a much higher level per pupil than what we're even proposing here in Marshall. And when we start looking at those comparisons, we can talk about those, and we're pretty proud of the fact that we've run a quality system like we have, keeping our costs under control, managing our system effectively, managing that budget so that we're consistent in what we're doing in terms of delivery of results, which Jeff talked about, but doing it in such a way that we've been much more efficient and cost effective than what some of our neighbors have been. But we're at a point where something has to give, and that's why we're standing and sitting in front of our community tonight and continuing to talk to our community and discuss with our community what it is that we're talking about so that we're ensuring that we have those elements in place.
I think we also have 3 public forums coming up where you can come and ask questions. One's going to be at the Best Western, one's going to be at the Marshall Middle School, and the third one is at
The third one's going to be at the community center,
community
for, the
center.
for the senior citizens, and the first one is on the 22nd, which is next Monday. It starts at 7 o'clock right after our school board meeting. I believe the next one is the 25th, and I believe the final one's the 28th. But we'll ask that that could be scrolled throughout the information here so that our community is aware of those opportunities. It's a chance where community members can come out, engage in a dialogue, and have a conversation with school administration, school board members, community members, because there's a very large group of concerned community members out there that are saying we need to keep this moving forward, we need to support this, and we need to vote yes. And that number of citizens supporting this is growing every day, and we're excited about that because we know that they see the value in what we're doing as an educational system. But again, we want to make certain that everybody's informed so that they're making an informed decision when they come to vote.
Well, those public forums are so crucial, and we really encourage everyone out there to attend one of those forums, because you're going to get a lot more information. And obviously we could sit here for another hour or so and talk about some of the key components, but those public forums really give you a chance as involved citizens to ask those questions, to how it personally impacts you. And I think one of the things we want just touch base real short as our time runs short is that you mentioned, Jeff, that with a home valued at $200,000, your impact is anywhere between $10 and $15 a month, something like that. But we also are in an agricultural committee, or in a community, and there are watchers, homeowners out there that live out and are in the agriculture or own land. The question I have is how does this impact people that are on the family farms or do own land outside? I mean, some people say, well, because I own so many acres, this is going to cost me more. And I think we just quickly need to say something about that if we can.
It's not due to the Minnesota State Legislature passed a law a few years ago that's only going to tax the house in 1 acre, and I think that's it for a farm. Your farmland is exempt from the tax increase.
I think that's key because, once again, in an agricultural community, people are thinking that may be the case. But once again, it's only the house, the garage, and 1 acre of land.
Correct.
Yep, that's correct.
That's what your increase would be based on.
Yes, sir.
And I know that you have charts and graphs and all kinds of things out there that will be at these public forums that will give everyone, whatever their value of their property is, what their rates will be. Would it be a $50,000 home, $100,000, $200,000 or more? It's all broken down to where really it comes down to minimal dollars invested by everyone to pass this operating levy to continue or retain what we currently have, a quality education system.
Right. And another point of emphasis as we talk about this, we've been talking a lot about the quality of our educational system. And one of the questions that we've been posed with is, well, what about those expenditures that you have in all of those activities? My gosh, you have so many student activities, and you're traveling to the Twin Cities, and you're traveling so far for these kids to participate in these activities. Well, the reality is that our activities are less than or right around 4% of our budget. And in terms of our overall operations, let's just hypothetically say that the district were to cut 15% of all activities expenditures. So we took our activities budget and we said we were going to take 15 cents off of every dollar that we're spending in there right now. That would only equate to a savings of about $90,000. And when you put that in the context of reducing potentially $1.2 million over the next couple of years, that's such a small piece of the larger puzzle of what we're talking about. But then you have to look too at the reality that there are not many schools our size. That's one of the uniquenesses of Marshall is we're a large regional center, and we have to travel to places like Watertown, South Dakota, or Worthington, or to Wilmer, or to Mankato, or to some of the tier suburb districts around the Twin Cities. so that we're competing with like-sized school systems. Let's face it, it wouldn't be necessarily fair for the Marshall football team to square off against the football team from Russell Tyler Ruthven or from Tracy. That's just not fair to either system. And the reality is many of those things are dictated to us at a level much higher than where we are. It comes from the State High School Activities League, and the structures that we have to work under come from those levels. And there are some discretionary travels that we have locally, and we've worked to manage those so that we're balancing the number of local events with away events. But again, back to the bigger issue, that's such a small part of everything that we do, but it does pay huge dividends. You talk about learning those 21st century skills. As a former coach, as a former player in those activities when I was in high school, not all that far away from here over in Lake Benton, I know that you learn a tremendous amount of information about teamwork and about the value and respect of others and each other and adults in those type of venues, that it is an important skill set for our kids to have. So I hope our community understands that. And I know one of the things that's been raised is, well, there's such an emphasis on activities in our school system. Actually, the emphasis is on academics. The emphasis is on core curriculum. And the reason I say that is, quite frankly, this. Where your money goes is where your priorities are. And when you see that only 4% of our budget goes to activities and the remainder of our budget goes to those core academics, you can see where our priorities are and where our priorities remain. So it's important that our public understands that and knows that. And it is a good investment for what we get in return. And it goes back to the point that Jeff talked about. Those kids are engaged in after school events and involved, and there's a tremendous amount of community pride around those activities. We had several thousand people that have been to basketball games, football games, soccer events, wrestling tournaments, music and marching band activities, all of those things. And that instills community pride, and it does add to that economic engine again of a vibrant school system equals a vibrant community equals a vibrant economy.
That's so true. And in taking great pride in knowing that in the past we have spent our dollars responsibly, wisely, emphasizing academics, it makes this vote so crucial and important, and passage of that to continue to provide those services. And I guess our goal here tonight, or this afternoon, was to provide you with the information that you need to understand the challenges that we are facing right now. And it is a very key challenge for our school district, for our entire community. Because, once again, as I said earlier, our school district is such an important player in our community development, economic growth, that we can't afford to go backwards.
Doug, people ask me, relatives, friends that I know across the country, why do you live in southwestern Minnesota? Why don't you live in the Twin Cities? Why don't you move to St. Louis? Why don't you move here and be closer to us in Omaha? I tell them it's because Marshall, Minnesota, the people care about each other. We care about our community. We care about our very young. We care about our very old. We take care of each other. It is definitely a community. We speak to our neighbors. On the school board, you elected the 6 members who are all very responsible, very diversified, very good community members to run the school system for you. They all unanimously say, we need this money to continue. We need this money to keep caring for our children. It's simple as that. If we want to keep a vibrant, caring community, we have to take care of our children.
I guess as we wrap up the show, and if there's anything else we missed, I'd like to just share with the community. Let's talk a little bit about when this important vote process takes place. What can our residents do, or where is the voting, all of that logistical stuff that really, once again, we just encourage everyone to get out and, of course, vote yes. There's 2 questions on the ballot. But where do our watchers vote? what's the? I mean, I think it's a National Guard Army. Maybe you just share that information.
Yeah, and first of all, everybody should have received a letter in the mail, and some households may have received two, may have received more than two. And the reason that is we're mandated by state law to provide people with a copy of the ballot, and that was something that Doug held up earlier. We had to provide every taxpayer, property taxpayer, a copy of the ballot. So if your household, for example, has one parcel of property in the name of one resident of that household and another piece of property that's held in the name of another resident of that household did receive two letters because there's two separate property tax payers. It wasn't being wasteful on the district's part, it was following state law. And that ballot is there so that people understand the language. It's also been in some of the literature that's gone out within the community. The ballot does have two questions. The first question is to revoke the current 200 and replace it with a 500. And again, like Jeff has said, that's to maintain. The second question then is for 175, and that's to go above and beyond the 500. So the total package, when you look at a total package question, $675 is what the total amount is, but it's only a $475 increase because we are revoking the 200 and it's only on top of that 200. So again, it's not getting us even to the state average of where we were before and where the state average has been. We anticipate that state average is going to grow though, because there are many, again, 100 school districts having this very same conversation that we're having right now with their communities, talking about the very same issues about quality education, quality support, and community pride. And that's really what it comes down to. The voting location at the Armory, voting polls open at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they'll be open throughout the day. You don't have to worry about necessarily finding special time in your day to go vote. Employers are required by law to allow voters to go out and vote. So we want people to be at the polls. We want them to be present. We want them to be informed so they're making a good decision for our schools and ultimately for our community as we approach and as we arrive at November 6th.
One of the things as we're talking about that is there's always the question about November 6th, I'm going to be out of town. Absentee ballots, so how do we go about encouraging people to do that?
I think all they would have to do is stop by the district office and pick up an absentee ballot.
And that's
You
at
had
the
to-
Marshall Middle School?
Marshall Middle School, correct. The old high school, Marshall Middle School.
It's
All right.
important.
I think I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on today, and I know there's going to be a lot more community dialogue as we go along, and we hope, once again, people get out to the public forums, become informed about the challenges that we face, and this is so crucial to our community. I also want to mention that for more information, if you can go online, you can go to www.marshallschoollevy.org, and I think a lot of this information about where you can actually sit down looking at your home property value, know exactly what your taxes are going to go, the impacts from what will we stand to gain, what could we stand to lose, all of those factors you need to know as a public informed citizens on why this is happening, all the questions that people have, and obviously we can kind of speculate some of those questions, and I think we've hit on most of those this evening, but as we wrap up the show, any last thoughts, gentlemen, that we want to share?
Doug, I'd just like to say, come out to the public forums, make the phone call, ask one of the school board representatives or the committee members, find out the right answers. Inform yourselves, and then, above all, vote. Vote for it. Yes, I want you to vote for it, but if you don't want that, vote against it. It's our school system. You tell us how you want it.
Superintendent?
Doug, I always like to close out the shows that we do by just thanking our community for what they have done for the school systems. We are blessed with a tremendous school system here in Marshall, and I grew up in southwestern Minnesota. I left southwestern Minnesota and went to extreme western Montana and found my way back here for a reason, and it speaks exactly to what Jeff has talked about. It's because of the value in families, it's the value of community, it's the value of each other that we have here, and it truly is Minnesota nice, and it's something that we have a lot to be proud of, and we need that for our community, obviously. None of us are happy that we have to stand necessarily in front of our community and say, we need more dollars. Nobody really likes to have to do that. However, it is a part of the funding mechanism of the state of Minnesota. Alice Segrin, the Commissioner of Education herself, was recently on television quoted saying that they fund only about 78% of what school districts expend in their general funds. So there's 22% that we have to find somewhere else, and that has to be found between federal and local sources. And unfortunately, that means that we're standing in front of our community asking for this support, and it's important, again, going back to what Jeff said, that people are informed and understand the impacts not only to our youth, not only to our school system, but also to our broader community as well. And we have a tremendous amount of pride in what we do, and a tremendous amount of pride in our community, and we know that many people share that same pride in our school systems and our community, and that's why they need to do just what Jeff said. Get out and vote. Be there.
Very well said. And once again, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Public Access TV tonight to share your thoughts. And I'd also like to thank our committee members that are out there. There's a great group of people out there also sharing, spreading the word, helping people become informed and making the decision about need. This isn't a case of want. This is need. This is a need for our community, a need for our children, our families. It impacts everyone. So as we wrap up, I want to thank Studio One, Public Access TV, for giving us this opportunity. I encourage you to get out, get involved, get to these public forums, go online, check out all the information so that you can make an informed decision about this big challenge to our community. And once again, that date is November 6th. That's a Tuesday. The polls are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the National Guard Armory. And we hope you continue watching and looking for more information on this. And on behalf of Jeff Chapman, our school board chairman, Mr. Clint Willer, superintendent of Marshall Public Schools, my name's Doug Goodman, and we hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, and good evening.